I was sitting in the back corner of the reception hall when the bride stood up to give her speech. Her perfect hair, her flawless smile, her designer gown that sparkled under the chandeliers. Serena always knew how to own a room, even when that room didn't belong to her. She raised her champagne flute high and smiled across the sea of dressed-up guests. My brother Liam beamed next to her, oblivious. I sat quietly at a table, meant for distant relatives, sipping ginger ale and pretending I didn't care. My 10-year-old son, Mason, sat beside me, kicking his feet under the table, bored and fidgety. Then Serena opened her mouth. "I'm just glad Liam finally escaped that pathetic sister of his," she said, laughing into the mic. At first, I wasn't sure I heard her right. I looked up. The crowd gave a few awkward chuckles. My face burned, and then my mother, my own mother, cackled. "She ruins everything she touches," she said, raising her glass like it was a toast. "Even her own marriage." The laughter spread more comfortably this time, like everyone had silently agreed it was safe to mock me. Mason looked up at me. His mouth opened, but I gently shook my head. My stomach twisted into a tight, hot knot. I wanted to disappear. The room got louder. The music returned. The moment passed for everyone else. But I felt like I was stuck under a microscope. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I didn't stand up and storm out. That's what they expected. That's the role I always played in this family, the broken one, the emotional one, the failure. So I sat there and said nothing. I swallowed it whole like I always had, but Mason didn't. He turned in his seat, looked around the room, then leaned toward me and said quietly, "Mom, should I show them the video of the bride in Dad's bed?" My heart stopped. I turned to him. His face was calm, innocent, but his eyes were sharp. They weren't angry. They were ready. I felt the blood drain from my face. He was talking about a video I hadn't watched in over 2 years, a video I never wanted to see again, a video I never meant for him to find, but he had. And somehow, in that moment, after watching me get humiliated and disrespected in front of our entire family, he decided it was time. Time to burn the lies down. My mouth was dry. I didn't answer him. I couldn't. My hands shook under the table. Before I could even say a word, Mason pushed his chair back, walked across the dance floor, and headed toward the DJ table. His little suit was wrinkled. His shoes were too big, but he walked with the kind of confidence most adults never find. My heart pounded in my chest. I was frozen. Everyone else was laughing, dancing, toasting. They didn't see what was coming, but I did, and in that moment, for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of it. I was ready. If I'm being honest, I didn't even want to be at the wedding, but I showed up because it was Liam, my younger brother. The only family member I used to trust before everything cracked. I thought maybe showing up meant something, even if nobody cared that I did. So I packed my son's bag, zipped up my dress that barely fit anymore, and drove 3 hours to pretend we were still a family. The venue was a renovated barn outside Charlottesville. Whitewashed wood, string lights, and fresh peonies arranged in tall glass vases. It was beautiful, in a curated magazine spread kind of way, but it didn't feel warm. It felt like a performance. And the moment I walked in, I realized who the audience was meant to be. Not me. The seating chart had me listed under Family Overflow. I was sandwiched between Great Aunt Diane, who barely remembered my name, and 2 cousins I hadn't seen since middle school. Mason and I sat alone at the far edge of the room next to the speakers. I wore a navy blue dress with scuffed heels I'd worn to job interviews and court dates. I tried to keep my shoulders back and my smile polite, but every time I made eye contact with someone from my family, their gaze slipped past me like I wasn't there. My mom didn't even hug me when I arrived. She air-kissed Mason, complimented his haircut, and moved on. She's always been like that, Patricia Voss, the polished matriarch. She knows how to work a crowd, how to keep appearances perfect, how to rewrite a story so she's always the victim or the hero, never the villain, and certainly never the mother of a disappointment. That's what I am to her. Not Elena, her firstborn. Just the girl who married a man she disapproved of, lost her business during the pandemic, and refused to start over the right way. I never raised Mason the way she wanted. I didn't ask her for help when Derek left, and I didn't hide away when he remarried someone worse. I sat there watching my brother at the head table, laughing with Serena and her glittery friends, and tried to remember the version of him who used to build forts with me in the backyard. The Liam who helped me sneak out of the house when I was 17, the one who held my hand at our dad's funeral. He had a soft heart once. I don't know when it hardened. Maybe it was when Serena entered the picture. She was everything I wasn't. Ambitious, elegant, confident in a way that made other people feel small. Liam introduced her 2 years after my divorce. I was still figuring out how to survive as a single mom, working overnight shifts, and living in a rental with paper-thin walls. When I first met her, I thought she was lovely, until I noticed how often she complimented people by comparing them to others, until I saw the way she looked at Mason like he was an inconvenience, until she whispered to my mom that I seemed unstable. I didn't confront her. I didn't start fights. I thought if I stayed quiet and kind, things would smooth over. They didn't. When Serena and Liam got engaged, I congratulated them and meant it. But my invitation to the engagement party got lost in the mail. Then I wasn't included in the group family photo for the wedding website. When I emailed Serena a list of family allergies for the reception, she replied with, "Noted, thanks, Emily." My name isn't Emily. Still, I came to the wedding. Because Liam is my brother, and because Mason wanted to see his uncle get married. He still loved Liam. He didn't know everything that had happened. I kept that from him. I didn't want to poison his image of family the way mine had been. Mason, at 10, is smarter than most adults I know, sensitive but fierce when it matters. He once gave his lunch to a new kid being bullied and told the principal if he got detention, he'd do it again next week. He reads everything. Books, people, rooms. He can feel when I'm lying, even if it's for his protection. And he loves me in a way no one else ever has, without conditions. As the ceremony began, he sat up straight, holding the ring box Liam had asked him to carry. He looked proud. It broke me a little. I wanted that feeling to last for him. I wanted him to believe in celebrations and promises and good people. The vows were beautiful. The weather was perfect. Everyone smiled. No one looked at me. After the kiss, we walked toward the reception hall, and I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the one that said, "They're going to find a way to humiliate you, just wait." I brushed it off, told myself to breathe. I didn't need their approval. I just had to make it through the night. But then came the toasts, and the microphone, and the bride's voice slicing through the air like a knife. I'm just glad Liam finally escaped that pathetic sister of his. I stared at the tablecloth, pretending to be invisible, as the laughter faded into the clinking of forks against plates and the low hum of conversation. Across the room, Serena took another sip of champagne and leaned into Liam's shoulder, grinning. She knew exactly what she'd done. She wanted to humiliate me, and she did it with a smile on her face and a microphone in her hand. Patricia, my mother, was still giggling with 2 of her old church friends. They looked over at me once. Just once. And turned right back like I wasn't even worth the gossip. I had become a cautionary tale they passed around between salad courses. The daughter who didn't listen, the woman who couldn't keep a marriage, the sister who brought drama and shame into every room she entered. I felt heat rush to my ears, the kind that makes your skin itch and your throat close up. But I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because crying in front of them would have proven them right. That I was weak, that I was too emotional, that I couldn't handle my own mess. Mason was quiet, too quiet. He picked at his food but didn't eat. I could see the way his jaw was clenched. His eyes didn't leave Serena for a full minute. I reached over and touched his hand, hoping it would calm him, ground him. "Hey," I whispered. "It's okay." "I'm okay." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "She doesn't get to talk to you like that." "She already did," I said, trying to smile. "Let's just eat and get through the night." But he didn't nod. He didn't let it go. And that should have been my first sign. The music kicked in again. People began to dance, or at least sway politely to the rhythm. I stayed seated. I wasn't in the mood for pretending. I kept my eyes on the exits. I wondered if anyone would notice if we just slipped out early. But Mason deserved dessert, and maybe one dance, and I didn't want to ruin the wedding by causing a scene. That's what I told myself. Then Serena started her rounds, working the tables. She smiled and kissed cheeks, accepting compliments about her dress and the ceremony. When she got to our table, she didn't even look at me. She leaned down and spoke to Mason directly. "You looked so serious during the ceremony," she said sweetly. Were you nervous about dropping the rings? Mason shrugged. No. Well, you did great, she said with a tight little smile. So brave. Not everyone in your family has that trait. She turned to walk away, but Mason said, loud enough for me to hear, I know what you did. She froze, then laughed like he'd said something adorable. What do you mean, sweetheart? He stared at her. His voice was soft but clear. I saw the video. I nearly knocked over my glass. I leaned in fast. Mason, enough. Serena's expression twitched, only for a second, but I saw it. That flicker of panic before she slipped the mask back on. I'm sure you're mistaken, she said, her voice tightening. He didn't reply. He just turned back to his plate like the conversation was over. Serena stood there for a beat longer, then walked away without saying goodbye. My hands trembled under the table. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I leaned in close to Mason, keeping my voice low and firm. Where did you see that video? He didn't look at me. On your old iPad, the one in the hall closet, it synced from the camera in your room. My stomach dropped. That camera had been set up during the final weeks of my marriage to Derek. I installed it after I started suspecting he was cheating. I'd almost forgotten it existed. The app had backed up everything to the cloud. I had never shown anyone that footage, not even in court. How much did you see? I asked. All of it, he said. I know it was her. I closed my eyes and tried to breathe. I had buried that part of my life so deep I thought no one would ever touch it again. I didn't want Mason to carry that pain. I didn't want him to know the full weight of betrayal. But he did. And he wasn't letting it go. They don't care what I say, I told him. It won't change anything. It'll change something, he said. It'll change what people think of her. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. My old lock screen lit up. The file was open. I didn't even know he knew my password. He looked at me. You won't do it. I get it, but I can. I stared at him. My sweet boy with a fire I had never seen in him before. He wasn't trying to get revenge. He wasn't doing it for attention. He was doing it because someone had hurt me and he couldn't live with watching it happen again. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just watched him walk across the room, phone in hand, his back straight, his chin high, and I let him go. Mason moved across the room like he had a mission. Not rushed, not dramatic, just steady, certain, calm in a way that only made the moment feel heavier. My hands were on my lap, fists closed, nails digging into the skin of my palm. My whole body was trying to stop him, but I didn't move. Not because I agreed, not because I wanted the truth out in front of all these people. I didn't move because something inside me had cracked open. It wasn't pride. It wasn't vengeance. It was clarity. For so many years, I stayed silent. Through the worst of my marriage, through the collapse of my business, through the cold shoulders from my family and the little jabs dressed as jokes. Every time they pushed me out, I held my tongue. I told myself it was strength, that walking away meant I had the higher ground. But sitting there at that reception, watching my 10-year-old son decide enough was enough, I realized silence hadn't protected me. It had only protected them. Mason reached the DJ table and tapped the man's shoulder. I could see the DJ hesitate, confused. Mason said something, then pointed toward our table, then showed him something on the screen of my phone. The DJ looked down, eyebrows raised. Then he looked across the room, at me, at Serena, at Liam, then back at the screen. I stood up. I wasn't sure what I was doing, whether I would stop him, whether I'd rush to grab the phone. But when I stood up, my knees didn't buckle, my voice didn't catch. I took a slow step forward, then another. It all slowed down. The room was still full of people. Half were on the dance floor. The others were seated, chatting, sipping wine, oblivious to what was brewing near the back wall. But Serena saw it. She was standing near the cake table, surrounded by a group of Liam's co-workers. She was smiling and laughing, completely in control. Then her eyes flicked toward the DJ booth. She saw Mason. She saw the phone. And something changed in her face. Not panic. Not yet. Just recognition. The kind of cold flicker that flashes through someone who knows exactly what's about to happen and understands they can't stop it. She turned to Liam, whispered something. He leaned in, concerned. But she didn't give him the full story. She smiled too quickly, too wide, and he nodded, still confused. Mason looked back at me once, one short glance, a check-in. He didn't need permission. He just needed to know I wasn't going to leave him alone. I gave a nod. Small, almost imperceptible. Do it. Then Mason turned back to the DJ and pointed to the screen again. The man hit a button and the music cut off. At first, no one noticed. The laughter continued. The servers kept refilling glasses. A few people looked around, wondering if it was a technical glitch. Then Mason stepped forward and picked up the microphone. He didn't stutter. "Hi," he said, loud and clear. "My name's Mason. I'm 10 years old. I'm Elena's son." Heads turned. Conversations dropped mid-sentence. I could feel the whole room shift its weight toward him. "She's my mom," he said, "the one the bride called pathetic." The word hit the room like a slap. People gasped. Some awkwardly chuckled, thinking maybe it was part of a joke. I saw Serena take one step forward. Liam grabbed her arm, asking something I couldn't hear, but Mason didn't stop. "She's not pathetic," he said. "She's the strongest person I know, and I think it's time everyone knows what really happened." "So, Mom, should I show them the video of the bride in Dad's bed?" It was like the floor dropped out from under the entire room. Gasps, sharp inhales. Chairs scraped the floor as people turned to look. Serena's hand flew to her mouth. Liam stepped back from her, confusion etched across his face. Mason turned to the DJ and handed him the phone. The DJ paused, uncertain, but then pressed play. I stood still. I didn't move toward the mic. I didn't shout. I didn't run. I just watched the screen behind the dance floor light up. It was grainy footage from a home security camera, my old bedroom, my bed. The door opened, and there she was, Serena, in leggings and a sweatshirt, and behind her, my ex-husband, Derek. The audio wasn't great, but the laughter was clear. The touch, the kiss, the familiarity, the betrayal that played out on the screen for 100 people to witness. The room went silent, then murmurs, then shouting. Liam stood frozen, the blood drained from his face. He looked from the screen to Serena, to me, to the screen again. His hands dropped to his sides. Serena stepped backward once, then again, and then bolted. She didn't wait for questions. She didn't try to explain. She didn't look at Liam. She just ran. Through the side door, out into the dark, gone. Mason stepped down from the DJ platform and walked back toward me. The microphone still dangled in his hand. The music hadn't restarted. The party hadn't resumed. Everyone was standing. Everyone had heard. Everyone knew. And in that silence, for the first time in a very long time, I felt power return to my body. Not the kind that screams, the kind that stands its ground and no longer apologizes. Mason handed me the phone. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I took it, put my hand on his back, and led him out the front doors of the reception. Together. The night air outside the reception hall was crisp, with a quiet hum from the string lights overhead. Mason and I stepped into the open space just past the patio, where the music no longer reached. I could still hear the chaos echoing behind us, gasps, shouting, the start of arguments unraveling all at once. But I didn't turn around. I kept walking forward until we reached the parking lot, my hand resting gently on Mason's shoulder. He didn't ask if he had done the right thing. He didn't ask if I was okay. He just stood next to me, still in his little suit, eyes forward, jaw set like he had carried a weight most adults wouldn't dare lift. For the first time that day, I exhaled without tension in my throat. I leaned against the hood of the car and looked up at the stars, faint against the glow of the venue lights behind us. My hands were still shaking, not from fear, not even from adrenaline, from release. Something had broken loose inside me, something old and heavy I had carried too long. The front doors of the venue burst open. Serena ran out, heels in one hand, her dress dragging against the gravel. Her mascara was streaked down both cheeks, hair falling out of its pins. She wasn't crying quietly. She was sobbing, breathless and messy, like the world had just collapsed around her. She didn't look at me. She didn't even seem to see us. She just kept running until she disappeared into the dark edge of the parking lot. Right behind her, Liam followed. He walked quickly, but not in a panic. His jacket was unbuttoned, his tie askew. He stopped a few steps from me, face pale, fists clenched. I braced myself. He looked me in the eyes, searching for something. Truth, explanation, maybe a memory of a time when we were kids and still on the same side. "You knew," he said. I nodded once. "Not until after she moved in with you. Not until the divorce. Why didn't you tell me?" I didn't answer right away. The words mattered now. I looked at him, the way I used to when he scraped his knees as a kid, and asked if the pain would go away. "Because I didn't think you'd believe me," I said. "You were already choosing her. I thought if I told you, it would just look like jealousy." He didn't deny it. He didn't argue. He stared at the ground for a long moment before looking back up at Mason. "I didn't want him to do it like that," I said. "I didn't know he would." "I'm glad he did," Liam said quietly. "You shouldn't have had to sit through that toast." The weight of that sentence hit harder than I expected. I had spent so many years waiting for someone in my family to acknowledge how cruel they had been. One sentence wasn't enough to heal it, but it was the first time Liam had seen me without the filter Serena and our mother had placed over me. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do now," he said. "That's not my job to figure out," I said. "You wanted a perfect life. I hope you start building an honest one instead." He nodded. Then he turned and walked back toward the venue. He didn't look back. Mason leaned against me, tired now. I pulled him into a hug and kissed the top of his head. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "I feel better now." We sat in silence for a moment longer, then I opened the car door and helped him into his seat. I drove us back to the hotel in silence, both of us too full of emotion to talk. Back at the hotel, after Mason fell asleep curled up beside me, I lay in the dark and replayed the moment again and again. Not the moment Serena ran, not the silence after the video ended, the moment Mason looked at me before he played it. He had trusted me to back him, to let the truth breathe for once, and I did. That night, for the first time in over a decade, I didn't dream of being silenced or ignored. I didn't dream of being trapped in my old life or swallowed by the past. I dreamed of freedom, not loud, not dramatic, quiet, steady, earned. The next morning, I woke up to over 20 missed calls. Half were from my mother. The others from cousins, aunts, people who had seen the video or heard about it before the cake had even been cut. I didn't answer any of them. I turned my phone off, packed our bags, and drove Mason home. We stopped for pancakes at a place off the highway. We sat in a booth with chipped vinyl seats and sticky menus, and for the first time in a long time, we laughed over breakfast. Mason looked up from his chocolate chip pancakes and said, "So, do we get invited to Christmas, or are we officially banned?" I smiled. "Does it matter?" He thought for a second, then shook his head. "Not really." That was the truth. It didn't matter. The people who tried to rewrite my story in whispers had just been confronted with a chapter they couldn't erase, and the person who brought it to light wasn't me. It was my son, the child they ignored, the one they underestimated. He gave me back my voice by using his, and I wasn't going to lose it again. It's been 4 months since the wedding. I haven't heard from my mother. Not a phone call, not a message, not a single attempt to explain or apologize. And I haven't reached out either, not because I'm angry, though I would have every right to be, but because I no longer feel the need to prove anything to her. She made it clear who she thought I was, and I'm finally done trying to change her mind. Liam sent one message a few weeks after everything collapsed. A simple text that read, "I should have protected you and I didn't. I'm sorry." I didn't reply right away. I needed time to figure out how I felt. He was my brother, and I had loved him fiercely once. But love without loyalty isn't love. It's just obligation wrapped in nostalgia. When I finally answered, I told him I appreciated his words, but I needed space. He respected that. I later heard through someone else that he'd started therapy, that he canceled the honeymoon and moved back into his old apartment, that he cut off contact with Serena completely. I don't know what his future looks like, but I hope he finally sees that protecting an illusion is not the same as protecting a person. As for Serena, she disappeared, deleted her social media, didn't return the dress, left town as far as I know. Her name isn't spoken in my family anymore, at least not publicly. That's the thing about truth. You can't put it back in the box once it's out. You can pretend, you can deflect, but it lingers. It fills every room whether you invite it or not. Mason went back to school the following Monday like nothing happened. He didn't brag. He didn't act like a hero. But something about him changed. He started walking taller. He spoke more confidently in class. His teacher emailed me to say he seemed more focused and self-assured. I wanted to explain everything but didn't. I just said thank you. One evening, I asked him if he ever regretted what he did. "No," he said without hesitation. "She hurt you. I couldn't let her keep getting away with it." It took me a second to respond. My voice cracked a little when I said, "I'm proud of you, but you know I would have been proud of you even if you hadn't done anything, right?" He nodded, then added, "But I wouldn't have been proud of myself." That moment will stay with me forever. In the weeks that followed, I found myself thinking about silence again. For so long, I believed that staying quiet meant staying strong, that it kept the peace, that speaking up would make things worse. But I was wrong. Silence doesn't protect you from pain. It just delays the explosion. And when it finally comes, it does more damage because no one sees it coming. What Mason did was brave, but what surprised me more was how it shifted something in me. I stopped apologizing for existing. I stopped editing myself down to the version they preferred. I stopped swallowing every insult like it was medicine. I started taking up space again. I enrolled in an evening course to finish my business degree. I set boundaries with people who used to walk all over me. I even reconnected with a friend I hadn't spoken to in years because I was too ashamed of how far I'd fallen. She welcomed me back like no time had passed, and slowly the shame began to fade, not because I earned forgiveness or approval from anyone, but because I stopped needing it. Mason and I built a new kind of rhythm at home. We cook dinner together now, something we never made time for before. He likes to read out loud while I fold laundry, and I like to listen. There's peace in the ordinary when you're not carrying other people's judgment. Sometimes people ask me what I would have done differently if I could go back. Would I have stopped Mason? Would I have found another way to expose Serena? Would I have walked out when I heard that first insult? But the truth is I wouldn't change anything, because that moment wasn't just a public scandal. It was a reckoning. It forced every person in that room to confront the truth they had been pretending not to see. And it reminded me that I'm not the person they said I was. I'm a woman who survived betrayal, who raised a son with courage, and who finally spoke when it mattered. They used to say I ruined everything I touched. They were wrong. I didn't ruin that wedding. I rescued myself from it. And in the process, I taught my son something most people don't learn until much later in life, that silence isn't always noble, that the truth matters, and that your voice has power, even if it shakes. We weren't invited to Thanksgiving. We didn't hear from anyone at Christmas, but we made a snowman in our backyard, ordered Chinese food, and watched movies until Mason fell asleep with his head in my lap. It was the happiest holiday I've had in years. And when I tucked him into bed that night, he looked up at me and said, "Next time someone tries to mess with you, don't wait for me to handle it." I laughed, kissed his forehead, and said, "I won't, because now I don't need saving. I've got a voice, and I plan to use it." So if you've ever been silenced, underestimated, or made to feel small in a room where you should have been safe, know this: your truth matters. Your voice matters. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop asking for permission and start standing in your story. I hope this one made you feel something. If it did, give it a like so it can reach more people who need to hear it. Share it with someone who's been through their own version of this. And if you have a story like this, where you stood up, spoke out, or found your voice, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. You never know who needs to read it. And if you want more true, raw stories like this, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for watching. I'm Elena, and this time I told the story myself.